You've been there in Minneapolis. You've been in Brooklyn Center. Could you sort of compare for us, if you will, what it's been like and how it's been different in those two places?
Let me put them on mute for right now. Well, I guess notifications go out, and we're waiting for people to come in the room. They have, oh God. So they've reached a verdict in the murderer's trial. So they are scheduled to read it at 4:30 our time. It's 5:30 Central Time. Like schools are just getting out. Like I'm nervous. You don't have your news on. I am watching this live on the NBC News YouTube channel. So they have all the gates up. Hey, Joshua. Hey, just read my book. We are waiting patiently. Hey, Watermelon Sugar. Yes, Miss Baything, already there is a verdict. They are, I too, you know, I think we all are hoping for the best possible outcome. We don't know yet. They're not reading it until 4:30. So it's not going to be read until 4:30. So because they have to call everybody back into court and get everybody in place. From what I was hearing, from the reporting that was going on, it's time for schools to get out. There will not be school for the next 3 days, just in case. Because they are taking very much from, you know, okay. Because justice is never the default for us. Oh, they split the world as well. My chest hurts. So what they are saying is that it's a unanimous decision on all counts. Whatever their decision is, they were unanimous on all counts. Well, he's already got whatever charges that they have. They can't add charges at this point. So whatever the charges were, hold on, let me see if I can Google exactly what his charges were. I will get his charges. Okay. So they have 3 counts. He is charged with 2nd-degree unintentional murder, 3rd-degree murder, and 2nd-degree manslaughter. He could be convicted on all 3 charges, some or none. So those are the charges that he has been charged with. Hold on, let me put on my headset so I can hear Loretta. Hey, boo.
Hey, boo. What's up, y'all? Hey, everybody. No, Joshua, it's not going to be 1st-degree murder. 1st-degree murder means that there was a premeditation.
Right.
That means that he woke up that morning with the intention to kill George Floyd, and there's no way to prove that. That's just not feasible. He didn't do it. So there's never going to be a charge of 1st-degree murder in this case, unless they were able to show that they knew each other and there was some sort of beef. And I mean, it would have been a whole thing.
Right. It would have been a whole thing.
1st-degree murder, I think people don't understand the definition of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree. Right. So 1st degree means that there was a premeditation. You left the house knowing you were going to kill somebody that day.
Like you said, I know this nigga go to lunch at 12 o'clock, so I'm going to be at his job waiting for his ass when he come out, and pow, pow. That's not what happened.
Yeah, that's not it.
Like, he didn't start out his day he could have started out his day and kill a nigga, but I don't think it has to be intentional. Like, he started his day with George Floyd is on my list, checking him off, gonna kill him.
Exactly.
That's not what this is.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Hey, just read my book. I haven't seen you in a long time. Hey, Love Blake, where y'all been? How y'all doing? Hey, Believe. This
is stressful. That's what I want y'all to understand. This is stressful. What they're reporting is
But them knowing each other isn't enough to prove
That's not
premeditation.
enough. Mm-mm.
You have to be able to prove that.
Oh, thank you,
Oh,
Belize.
thank you, Belize. Mwah. You have to be able to prove that that man woke up that morning with, I'm going to find George Floyd and I'm going to kill him today. Like
Right, like
you would
he
have.
had a
There's no
plan for
way.
that day to kill him.
Yeah, there's no way to prove that.
I think he took glee in killing him if they knew each other, but I don't think
Yeah,
that was his. I don't think it was his premeditated plan to.
Yeah, I mean, he had no idea that George Floyd was going to go in that store and that the
Right.
store owner was going to call the police. Like he couldn't have planned that. Like that's not.
That's
Now,
not what it is. As much as we
right.
don't like this man.
Right now, if he had texted George Floyd and said, "Meet me at such and such and such and such time," and they had text messages to show that they had planned to meet up,
That
and
he
then he
set him
killed them,
up to get
then
killed.
maybe they'd have been able to prove premeditation. But in this case, no. Right. I mean, as much as I would love for him to get that, it's just not. See, that's what
It's not
happens when.
feasible.
Right. They overcharge people out of anger and out of pressure from the public, and then that's how people get off. Because that's what happened in the
Right.
case of Trayvon Martin. The DA overcharged him.
They threw everything that they thought could even possibly stick.
Right. They
And then
overcharged
none of
him.
it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what they reported is that it's a good thing that the verdict came back this fast, because
I was thinking the same thing too.
if it was not, there would be. Oh God. Okay, this is normally when I would wake up from a nap when I went to lunch, but they said that, and they said when they go to the filming of the courtroom, pay attention to the court officers and where they are in the courtroom, because if there is like an abundance of, well, yes, he needs to be in jail.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
If there's an abundance of officers next to where he's sitting, is that because once they read the verdict, he's immediately going into custody, just in case he want to try and jump up and run out. Nah, bro, you gonna have to. No.
Hey, Lady Steph. Hey, boo.
Hey, Steph. So yeah, I just listen. Like, I didn't feel like I wanted to be by myself. That's why I'm live, because I felt like I didn't want to be by myself when this verdict was read, because we have been done so wrong in so many cases where it has been blatant that the police were in the wrong and they should not have done what they did, but they still got off. Like, our lives mean nothing to them, where we don't trust it, even with the goo mountains of evidence that was monumented in this case. We still feel like at any time that they could say, well, he was a nigga, so it's all right. You're free to go.
What about sugar?
Feelings are stupid. They are. They are hella stupid.
I agree.
Listen.
Just stupid.
They are.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lady Steph. This reminds me of the OJ verdict. Like, everybody remembers where they were. I mean, if you are of age, you remember the OJ verdict. You remember where you were. You remember like this is what this reminds me of, the OJ verdict.
Like, I feel like I was whose verdict was it? I was driving in a car and I literally had to like pull over. I was like, oh, I think maybe it had been Trayvon Martin, because I think I was old enough.
Hey,
because Trayvon is the same. Trayvon is the same age as my son, my oldest son.
Oh,
so God. That one took me, because listen, you did listen. That is a parent's worst nightmare. She's like, I can't. It's too much. My nerves is bad.
Well, that's what I said to you when you said you was coming live.
Listen, that's why I'm coming live, so I don't be by myself and be all in my feelings in a corner.
Well, that's true. That's true too.
Rocking back and forth and back and forth.
You know what? I was at school when the Rodney King verdict came down. Joshua, I didn't realize you were old enough to remember Rodney King. I don't know why I thought Joshua was young. I was in school. I remember coming home from school and my mother telling me, and I all I said to my mother was, "Oh, they're gonna riot," and I turned around and left out the room. Like, I was like, "They're gonna riot." I was in
Yes.
Miami when the
They
Trayvon
already,
verdict.
I think they already won their civil suit, Love Blake. They got millions of dollars, like $10 million
Yeah, they got.
or
Yeah, they
something.
got the. Yeah, they
They
settled.
got them.
The
They've
city
already settled
settled.
the civil. The city had no choice because the burden of proof is on them, not on. It's very different in a civil trial, and it's a lot easier to prove the burden, the preponderance of the burden, in a civil trial than it is in a legal, not legal, but
Watermelon Sugar. I thought me and you were around the same age. You couldn't have been in middle school when Tupac died if me and you were around the same age.
First of all, not when Tupac died. God. Okay, I found my peacock look, and I saved the picture. So be on the lookout for Thursday.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say, Joshua, I thought you were young. I thought you were young.
I was about to. I don't remember. I can't spell either. Jesus. Okay, there's a lot of white people on this new screen that I just don't want to hear from y'all. I'm trying to just, trying to keep my patience until they got 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you were Watermelon Sugar, yeah, because I'm older than you, so maybe you were in middle school, child.
It was in 95. I had 2 babies. No, I had Eric in January of 95. So I was 18 when this happened.
Y'all making me feel old now. Damn it.
Did it say
3 years
guilty?
before he was
Oh,
born.
wait. Hold on. I'm going to share the screen. Hold on.
Okay, hold on. Let me come back.
Hold on. Because I didn't share the audio. Hold on. Okay, so let me try that one more time. So I get the little screen in here and click there to share the audio. Okay. They just put a cryon up. I think it was a mistake. I don't think they meant to do it that early. Let me take where's the mute button? Hold on. There we go.
You just can't stop thinking about the trial and the verdict and what the jury is doing in there, especially if they're not sending out a lot of notes. It really is hard to divine what they're thinking about if they're not telling the judge with any notes.
Like I was just watching this and they put the little thing up there.
None of us will ever know what they're saying in there. None of us will ever find out.
But I think that was an accident. I think they put it up too early.
Whether we're sitting with our client or alone in a library somewhere, just sweating it out.
After that verdict is read very shortly, there will be a lot of shoulda, coulda,
man was on the screen. The black man was on the screen.
Ahead of the verdict right now, what stands out to you as a weakness or a missed opportunity on either side's presentation?
In the little box.
The prosecution really followed
too. It did say guilty.
101. They pulled in a lot of experts on each issue. In a way, it was what defense attorneys sometimes call, in our jaded way, prosecutorial overkill. But I don't blame them at all because they have the burden. They have the burden to prove each and every element beyond a reasonable doubt. So if I'm the prosecution, I'll bring in as many experts as I can to cover each and every element as completely as I can. And they did that. They brought in the scientists. They brought in the use of force experts. They brought in the eyewitnesses. This was a very good job the prosecution did. Bringing in eyewitnesses. And you might ask, well, why do you need eyewitnesses to a video that we can all see? Well, the prosecution very cleverly brought them in to make this much more emotional than it already was by those witnesses telling the jury about their reaction, what they thought. And you couldn't have gotten any better witnesses for the prosecution. You had a firefighter, you had an MMA fighter who could opine almost like an expert himself. On the defense side, I mean, they stuck to the battle plan. They really attacked the two main pillars, the main themes we knew they would attack. Number one, causation. And that was that Derek Chauvin's knee in the back of the neck may have been mean. It may have been not very nice, not very polite, but it was not the cause of George Floyd's death. But causation being so tricky that really delved into a lot of science and a lot of things that jurors and lawyers alike were dealing with probably for the first time. And then, of course, they attacked the use of force, and they brought their own expert, the defense did, and they argued that, look, not only was this force not a felony, it was something that was accepted and taught. So it could not be an aggravated assault. It could not be something that was imminently dangerous because it was acceptable. And the defense would and did argue
Blake, they said that it is a ghost town.
George
They
Floyd
said
out,
downtown
put him on the
Minneapolis
ground in
is
the
a
prone
ghost
position.
town. That
Up until
everybody,
that moment,
sent
the use
everybody
of force was
home.
warranted.
They closed
And then they had
everything
to fight
down.
whether or not the
They said they're not having
internet
school for the next 3 days.
cause
Yeah,
and
remember I told y'all that they was
substantial
closing
causative
school.
factor in George Floyd's death. And we're going to find out in a minute if they got it right.
Danny, we'll invite you to stay with us. We may be in for a long afternoon, so thank you for being with us. Melissa Murray is an NBC News contributor and also a former law clerk to Judge Sonia Sotomayor. It's great to have you here. I want to talk about how this case has come to symbolize police use of force and racial tensions between communities and police.
Before I came
Unlike so many other cases, this wasn't about a split-second decision of flash. It was a cell phone, or maybe it was a gun. This was 9.5 minutes. So should we be looking at this case in isolation as different from many others?
YB? Hey, boo.
Well, there do seem to be some idiosyncratic elements to this case that are very different from the ordinary course of things. As you say, there wasn't necessarily the split-second moment where a police officer may have misapprehended what a civilian is doing. For example, the Mohammed Noor case, which happened also in Minnesota shortly before the George Floyd case happened. Again, a lot of these cases require split-second judgments. Policing is inherently dangerous, and all of those things may factor into a trial like this. But what seemed to be the case here, and the prosecution really hammered it home in their closing statement, was an officer who didn't seem to regard this individual who'd been detained as a human. He was dismissive of him, callous to him, picking out the rocks from the tire as he had his knee on his back. And, honestly, a missed opportunity, I think, for the defense was that Derek Chauvin really never showed any emotion during this trial. I mean, he was masked for most of it, but we never saw anything that looked like regret from him. And I think the jurors probably saw him just sort of staring with a kind of flat affect throughout much of this trial. And maybe, again, that would have had some kind of reflection or inflection point for them as well. But I think there are some missed opportunities here, but I also think this was a very sort of singular case.
And we'll be able to put it in greater perspective in the coming minutes as we await that jury to return to the Minneapolis courtroom and deliver their verdict. In the meantime, let's go to NBC's Gabe Gutierrez. He's been following this trial since the beginning last month. We talked to you about a half hour ago, and we're seeing a lot more people there in anticipation. Describe the scene and what's about to happen there, Gabe.
That seems dangerous.
Yeah, Lester, this crowd is growing by the second.
Probably just a small adult.
Several people, several dozen people, perhaps several hundred now, yelling Black Lives Matter. And this is similar to the crowd that we've been seeing over the last couple of days. Peaceful protesters that were supporting George Floyd's family. But Lester, I want to set the scene a little bit here. Look, this is the Hennepin County Government Center. This is the courthouse where this has all been happening. In the distance, if this comes back there, military presence, several members of the National Guard here, very tight security. This entire area has been fenced off since before this trial started. But Lester, we've been speaking with many of these protesters, and they said that, again, this has been a very difficult trial for them to watch, a very emotional trial for them to watch, a trial that has given them a lot of anxiety as they awaited this verdict. And just within the past few minutes of the announcement of the verdict being read, we saw this crowd gather here. There's a lot of media here as well, really from around the world, but also some folks that we did talk with from around the Midwest that came here to view this trial and to see what the verdict would be.
So again, Lester, his wife hit him upside the head. Now he got a knot on his head.
Any minute now. This crowd has gathered here. It's now numbering several hundred. They have signs with Black Lives Matter. There's somebody on a loudspeaker right now saying "No justice, no peace." Again, this case really has come to be seen as putting the American policing system on trial, although inside that courthouse, the prosecution and the defense both say that this is about the actions of one police officer, the actions of Derek Chauvin.
That it's about the actions of
here see this as much more than that. They see this as one of the most important
larger issue that we have been seeing
in recent memory. And again, they're gathering right here as we wait this verdict.
Gabe, as we've been talking about, there are 3 charges: second-degree manslaughter, third-degree murder, second-degree unintentional murder. Do you get a sense from activists, from the crowds, what they would consider, I hate to use the term win, but that's all that comes to mind at this particular moment,
if he's found guilty,
or have the family views it.
If he gets found guilty of all 3 charges, then all of the sentences will run concurrently, which means at the same time. Like they're not going to say 40 years plus 25 years plus another 25 years. So now you got 85 years worth of time.
Ever
all
since George Floyd was killed last May. A very emotional time for the folks here.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You, Lester.
All right, Kate, we'll get those communications issues worked out with you. Thank you. I want to go to Kristen Welker right now at the White House. The White House has made some planning for a reaction to this verdict, and the president himself has, in recent hours, commented on this case. Kristen, what do you tell us?
He called the.
Well, Lester, let me set the scene for you at the White House right now. President Biden was about to start talking about his American jobs plan when it was announced that there is, in fact, a verdict. So those remarks have now been delayed as the president and this administration monitors these developments. As one White House official told me, they are watching and waiting along with the rest of the world. As you point out, President Biden and his top officials have been preparing for him to make some type of statement, remarks, reaction once there is a verdict. But earlier today, during an event, he was speaking and was asked about the trial, and he said that he prays that the jury reaches the right verdict. Now, those comments came under an immense amount of scrutiny. We asked the press secretary about it repeatedly. Was it appropriate for President Biden to weigh in on the verdict in that way before, in fact, the jury had come out and spoken? She denied that he was trying to put his finger on the scale. Instead, she noted that he had spoken to the family of George Floyd, that this was clearly an emotional time for them, for the rest of the country, and he was clearly echoing that. Now, taking a step back, Lester, we know that the administration has been in close contact with state and local officials. They are urging the public to remain calm once there is a verdict, that if there are protests, for them to be peaceful protests. And of course, that echoes what we are hearing from the family as well. We'll be watching closely to see what President Biden has to say when and if, in fact, he does speak publicly after there is a verdict. We know that the issue of criminal justice, of racial equality, has been one that he has spoken about quite extensively. And right now, the administration, from a legislative perspective, has been pushing for Congress to move forward with a bill titled the George Floyd bill, which would make it easier to prosecute police misconduct. So that is the scene here behind the scenes within the Biden administration as they watch and wait for a verdict. Lester?
Kristen, thank you. We are past 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, within the window now when we would expect to hear from the jury their verdict in the case of former Officer Chauvin. While we await that verdict, let me bring in Eugene Robinson. He's a Washington Post columnist and NBC News political analyst. Eugene, always good to see you. This is a moment of deep breath for everyone. We're all emotionally tied to the story because we were witnesses to it, to the extent that we saw that videotape of George Floyd dying under the knee of a police officer. As we await this verdict on 3 charges, what, in your view, should we be keeping in mind? What's our deep breath? What should it look like right now?
Well, we should try to remember that this verdict will be about the specific officer and what he specifically did that day. Reflect that this is a micro situation with macro implications, with implications for the whole country, and for so many of us, for so many African American men, Lester, it's personal. It was intensely personal. Could that have been me under Derek Chauvin's knee for 9 minutes and 29 seconds? Could it have been one of my sons who found himself in that situation? And so this case, it's not just that it has taken on an outsized importance. It really does symbolize so much about this country's 400-year struggle with race and this country's, frankly, refusal to sort of acknowledge and grapple with the concept and reality of systemic racism, especially in policing. And so we've been so many of these incidents and so many of these deaths, and frankly, we've seen so many verdicts go in favor of police officers who were acquitted. And there was a sense in this case, because it was 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and because the video went around the world, there was a sense that this is where we have to draw a line. That this has to be seen as unacceptable by everyone, regardless of race, whoever you are. You have to see this as having been unacceptable. So now the question is that the way the jury saw it? And will the jury, in essence, ratify what many of us all think we saw in that video, or will they take a different view? And what does that say to African Americans and to us personally about how we are seen in this country and how we are treated and how we are regarded? George Floyd was not treated like a citizen by Derek Chauvin. He wasn't treated like a member of the public that Derek Chauvin was sworn to protect. I think we could all agree on that. Yet that's what we're supposed to be, and that's what we have a right to be. And so, just an awful lot seems to hang on what these poor 12 people decide. My sympathies are with the jury because this has got to be difficult for them, and it's certainly got the rest of us on tenterhooks, just waiting to hear what they decided.
Yeah, they are sequestered, but they are certainly citizens of this country and this world, and certainly have to have some inkling. Not a lot of inkling about the climate in this country.
The defense attorney tried to get a mistrial because he said that Maxine Waters
our audio connection
said that
is
if
back.
we
And so,
don't
Gabe,
get
let me
the
ask you
right trial,
about what will happen in the courtroom.
He was like, she
the
tried
verdict
to,
will be
she
read.
was influencing
What would
the
you
jury.
expect to see next?
Sir, go sit down.
Well, Lester, it's such a highly anticipated moment. The jury will be brought into the courtroom. The verdict will be read. They'll go through the three charges, as you've been discussing: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And the verdict will be read for each of those charges.
Come on, it's 4:42. What are y'all doing?
And then, shortly after the jury is let go, we anticipate the Attorney General, Keith Ellison. He will be speaking publicly, and then sometime after that, we also expect to hear from the Floyd family. But what happens after that? Of course, local authorities have been urging folks here to stay calm. As I was mentioning earlier, and we could see even a growing crowd here that has been gathering here right outside the courthouse. But again, just a few moments away potentially about hearing this verdict, something that has been so long awaited here in Minneapolis. But yes, we expect the verdict to be read.
We actually
There's
are
also the
okay with the
consideration of
occupants of the
whether
White House
there
right
will
now.
be
Can we not?
aggravating factors in this case. In
Can
other
we
words,
not
bumping
burn
up
the
any
White House
potential
down right now?
sentence. We don't expect sentencing to happen right away. But as has been discussed, Lester, each of these charges carries up to a certain amount based on if there's several aggravating factors. In this case, we're told that the judge will decide on those aggravating factors. But with a second-degree murder, the maximum penalty being 40 years in prison, with third-degree murder maximum being 25, and then the maximum for second-degree manslaughter being 10 years. But the recommended sentencing for each of those charges, based on first-time offenders like Derek Chauvin would be, that is much shorter, 12 and a half years or so for the first two charges, second and third degree murder, and 4 years for second degree manslaughter. So there will still be those outstanding questions on exactly, what a potential sentence would be if there is a conviction. But many of these protesters, and demonstrators right now, they just want to hear what exactly this verdict will be. Really, as not just the city of Minneapolis,
the first offender and he's only
really
getting 12 years.
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. As we look from above the aerial view of the park there across from the courthouse, not a lot of people, but certainly a growing crowd that we've been watching there.
But if they are
like the rest of us now, anticipate this announcement within the next several minutes is based on the window we've been given. The verdict to be announced by the jury in the Derek Chauvin case. Let me go to NBC correspondent Megan Fitzgerald. She's also in Minneapolis covering the reaction in the city. You've been talking to some of the demonstrators, Megan. What are you hearing? What do they anticipate? What do they expect?
Yeah, Lester, we were out here yesterday when shortly after those closing arguments, hundreds of people filled the street here in Minneapolis calling for justice for George Floyd. And we talked to people asking them, what does that look like for you? And it's a couple of things here. They say that they want to see a guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin, but they also want to see changes systemically to the way that police in our country. This is a deeply personal moment, a deeply personal trial for people all across the country, and we see that, and we have been seeing that with the diverse crowds of people that have come out and protest across the nation. We talked yesterday to people who flew in from different parts of the country, saying it was important for them to be here to show support to George Floyd's family. In fact, I had an opportunity to speak with them yesterday, asking them how they felt as we awaited the verdict. And they said that they're anxious. They're ready for this entire process to be over, but that they're very hopeful that Derek Chauvin will be found guilty. And they realize the magnitude, just the gravity of this case, telling me that this is bigger than their brother. They feel as though their brother was publicly executed, they say, a modern day lynching, as they call it. And they say if there is not justice for George Floyd, if there's not a conviction here, that they don't feel hopeful that anybody will get justice. But they were pleased that the protests yesterday here in Minneapolis remained peaceful, and they are calling for peaceful protests moving forward, but certainly hopeful that they will get the verdict that they are hoping for, Lester.
Megan Fitzgerald down here in Minneapolis watching the crowds. Thank you. NBC News legal analyst Paul Butler is a former federal prosecutor and Georgetown School of Law professor. Paul, just give me your thoughts as we wait this verdict.
So it's a relatively short deliberation process. It's hard to read anything into that. Typically, if it's a short deliberation, the conventional wisdom is that favors the defense. But in a case with this quality of evidence by the prosecution, I think all bets are off. We know that in the only other murder conviction of a police officer in Minnesota, that jury also deliberated the almost exact same amount of time, looking at the exact same charges, second degree and third degree murder and second degree manslaughter.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Let me bring in Mary Moriarty, a former chief public defender for Hennepin County, Minnesota. We thank you for being with us. Can you walk us through the process of how it will play out, the mechanics of the verdict, since you're obviously familiar with those courtrooms?
I can. The jury will be brought in when the judge is ready. And when they walk in, there will be one person who will have the jury verdict in their hand, and that's the person who will be the foreperson. And as a lawyer, you're always looking at that because you wonder who the foreperson will be. The judge will ask them if they have a verdict. The foreperson will say, we do. The judge's clerk will go get the verdict and hand it back to the judge. It can be the clerk, but it's probably going to be the judge who will actually read the verdict. And then the defense has the right to have the jury what is called polled. In other words, the judge will ask each individual juror if this is their true and correct verdict. He'll go down the line with numbers. They will all probably say yes. And then at that point, the judge has to make a decision if he's found guilty, if he's going to take Chauvin into custody because he is out on bail. On a presumptive prison case, he would be taken into custody. The state has asked for a sentence greater than the Minnesota sentencing guidelines. And so there will be, Chauvin actually waived his right to have the jury make that decision about whether there are aggravating factors. He is allowing the judge to make that decision, but the judge has already said in a previous order that he will allow the lawyers to write memos on that issue to try to convince him what the appropriate sentence will be. So we won't see a sentencing today. That would probably be in a couple of weeks or however much time the judge gives the lawyers to write their memos.
All right. Thank you for that perspective, Mary. Eddie Glaude is an NBC News contributor and joins us now. Eddie, we're watching the crowd build, and as I've been saying at the beginning of this, emotions have been high in this from the first time we saw that tape. So today should be no different now as we await the verdict. But what should people know? And I asked this question to Eugene a moment ago. We're in a deep breath moment now, waiting for this moment. What should we be thinking about and focusing on?
Well, unlike what the prosecutors told the jury, this trial bears the burden of the nation's central contradiction, Lester. And so there is a sense in which America's on trial here. And, whether they come back with a guilty verdict for all three counts, or if they just simply convict on second-degree manslaughter. The latter, I think, will generate discomfort, a kind of, disappointment in some ways. So I think the nation needs to be prepared for a kind of intensification of the reckoning that we've been experiencing around race, because policing in this country takes us to the heart of the contradiction. And so the trial won't resolve it, but it certainly has placed it in clear view for the nation. So we will see. My stomach is in knots at this moment, because I know that we stand on the precipice here.
All right, Eddie, thank you very much. Let's go back to Gabe Gutierrez right now on the ground outside the courthouse with the crowds. Gabe?
Longer the wait, the greater the crowd.
Hey there, Lester. So we were just speaking with the demonstrator. Hi, man. How are you? We were just speaking a short time ago, and you were talking to me about how tough it has been to watch this trial. What is the significance of what's happened here in Minneapolis over the last few weeks right in this courthouse?
Well, it shows that after a year of being apart from each other, that we come together for the stuff that matters. This has affected every single one of us that not only lives here, but across our nation, across our world. And we came here because we need justice, and we deserve justice, and we need something to change.
You were also telling me it's been very tough to watch. Have you been able to watch this trial?
No, I haven't been able to watch any of it. It's been traumatizing, reliving it over and over and over and over again. I haven't even watched the video of him being murdered. It's too much. It's too much to normalize all of it.
What do you think what do you think is the significance of this trial moving forward, not just for Minneapolis, but for policing in America, for social justice in America?
It means that they're finally listening to us. How many times do we have to say it? How many times do we have to cry and scream and burn down buildings? Enough's enough. You have to listen to us.
There's been a lot of people that have, there's been local officials have been very careful to tell people to protest peacefully. What do you make of, how Minneapolis looks like now? It's so boarded up. There's razor wire all around this city. Do you live here in Minneapolis? Are you a resident here? How tough has it been to see this community be like this for the last several weeks?
The audacity to bring people in here when you couldn't protect the Capitol. What have we been doing here? We've been asking for peace. We've been asking for justice. We've been asking for what we deserve. Are you kidding me? It feels like a slap in the face.
How often have you been out here? I know there was a crowd here demonstrating outside during jury deliberations. Were you out here yesterday? What do you expect to happen next after this verdict?
When George Floyd was murdered, I was out every day, and we were out. That's the thing that they didn't see on the news, is that we were out donating, and we were fundraising, and we were out in the streets trying to help build things back together. I haven't been able to be here since the trial started, because emotionally, it's, like I said, it's too much. But I know there's, and I'm not threatening when I say this, but I know there's going to be a problem if this verdict doesn't go the right way. And I'm praying that this time we get to see the justice that we're asking.
The Floyd family has called for peace. What do you say to people who might be worried about exactly what might happen if this verdict doesn't go the right way?
We want peace too. That's what we wanted to begin with. If Chauvin would have been peaceful with the way he was policing, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm not advocating for burning everything down and whatever the rhetoric is, but protesting is the language of the oppressed, right? So it's not on me to what's going to happen next. It's on them. It's on them.
Ma'am, something I've been to many of these protests over the last year or so, ever since George Floyd died. And speaking with folks like yourself, something that I've heard over and over again, this is the first time that potentially you might feel heard. Is that kind of what this experience has signified? Do you feel heard after what's happened here today, or not quite yet? Do you feel that you haven't been heard?
I will feel heard, and I think we will feel heard when they convict him. Otherwise, it's just radio silence again.
What do you think this means again? Do you think policing in America? Do you think this trial will change anything? Do you think that there needs to be more police reform? Do you think that any meaningful change will happen in your view from this verdict?
I hope so. If we're able to look at the history of what policing is in America, it was never founded to support people that look like me.
Don't you love it when they
there needs
pick
to
the
be
right
change.
person
There
to
needs
come
to
and
be an
talk to?
evolution, right? So we need to stop doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Thank you.
That's practicing insanity. Tell her, boo.
So Lester, her comments are something we've heard over and over again here. Just a very, she said she was traumatized listening to this trial, had a very tough time listening to it. You see a frustration among many of the folks here wondering what the verdict will be. But, I wanted to share her story with you because it is something we've heard over and over again, not just over the past couple of days, but really since the death of George Floyd.
Come on, Gabe.
And Gabe, thank you for sharing that interview. It was a good interview, and we appreciate it. I want to, first of all, let you know we are at 3:54 Central Time right now, near the end of the half hour in which we were told that we would be hearing the verdict. But as you know, things move on their own time, so we're not going anywhere. We'll continue to wait for that jury to return to the courtroom and the announcement of the verdict in the Derek Chauvin case. As we watch the crowd build in Minneapolis, let's take you all the way to the White House now. Kristen Welker is there. Kristen, they are watching all this very carefully there.
They're watching it very carefully, Lester, and I just spoke with a White House official who tells me that as we speak, preparations are underway for President Biden to speak once there is a verdict that will likely take place sometime this evening. What specifically will the president say? Well, of course, they have to wait until there is a verdict, but this official tells me that the president will call for peace regardless of the verdict. Now, we know that in the past weeks, the president, senior administration officials have been in touch with state and local officials in Minnesota. The governor there, we anticipate that the attorney general will play an active role in making sure that any protests are peaceful. There had even been some discussion of being ready to mobilize the National Guard should that be necessary. So they have been bracing for this moment for quite some time, Lester. And again, it does come on the heels of President Biden speaking to George Floyd's family, an emotional conversation by his own description of what took place. And then those really striking comments that he made in the Oval Office earlier today, saying that he is praying that the jury reaches the right verdict. He said it's overwhelming. Now, those comments have come under a fair amount of scrutiny today. And I can tell you that in these past minutes, we've been speaking to allies inside and outside of the White House who acknowledged that they weren't the most helpful comments at this moment, in part because it's opened him up to some criticism, including from some Republicans who have said that they are concerned that that type of rhetoric could inflame a nation that is already on edge as they await this verdict. So Press Secretary Jen Psaki answered a number of questions about this earlier today during the briefing, including for myself. I asked her if it is ever appropriate for a president to weigh in on a case of such magnitude before there is a verdict. And she said the bottom line is he was not trying to weigh in on the verdict itself. Instead, he was echoing the emotions that go along with this trial. So the White House is watching and waiting to see what will happen along with the rest of the world. And Lester, I can tell you that top officials are huddled in their offices as they try to prepare to respond.
All right, Kristen Welker. So we'll monitor that front as well. I want to go to NBC's Tremaine Lee. He's been closely following the trial. He's in the Greenwood neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a traditionally black neighborhood there. Tremaine, great to have you on. You're in a place obviously steeped in African-American history. I want to run this past you. And I'm sure you've been part of these conversations. There is a sense among activists, among communities of color, that this one should be an easy call. And I'm wondering if you see a risk in that assumption, thinking that this one will be different.
Take these off.
Lester, you know what, folks in this community, especially as you mentioned, there's such a deep history in this Greenwood community. They dealt with the 1921 race massacre. Then in 2016, Terrence Crutcher was shot and killed by a police officer. It was on video. There is currently a bill working its way through the state legislature that would make it illegal to film police. So this idea of a wariness to get their hopes up, even in the face of what so many people believe is evidence that is clear and is crystal clear, right? So to your point there, they don't want to get their hopes up because Black folks in this country haven't really experienced true justice. And so in this case, one way or the other, as I was speaking to a lawyer activist in Ferguson on my way to Tulsa, and he said, no matter what, America is not on trial. American racism is not on trial. Police aren't even on trial. This is the trial of Derek Chauvin. And so after the verdict is read, whether it's a guilty verdict or a non-guilty verdict, if policing doesn't change in this country, especially the way Black bodies and Black communities are policed, what difference will it make? So that wariness, that anxiety, that kind of tightening of the gut that so many people are feeling all across this country, a place like Greenwood, these residents know it more than most, Lester.
Yeah, Jermaine, thank you for joining us, and please stand by as we continue to wait for the verdict to be announced from Minneapolis. As we do that, we want to turn to criminal defense attorney and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savelos. Danny, we talked earlier about, I called it the speed of the verdict.
Say you want to do shit and get away with it without saying
they sometimes go this quickly, but does it tend to favor one side or the other?
Take all the conventional wisdom and courthouse gossip you may have heard about quick verdicts and throw it right out the window, Lester, because when it's a high-profile case, all the rules get scrapped. Nothing is what it normally seems. And in a case like this, where you already have complicated jury instructions for really complicated crimes. I mean, these are two forms of murder, which everybody grows up thinking murder is an intentional act. But in this case, it is a conceitedly unintentional killing for both second and third degree murder. So expect the jury to struggle a little with that. And that raises the question of, did they do one of two things? Did they walk into that jury room and say, I don't think the state made any of its case? Or did they walk into the jury room and say, I don't think the defense had it at any point here? And, you know, we may never know exactly how the discussions went down unless the jurors are willing to talk afterwards. But this short verdict does certainly suggest that the jurors didn't go through all of that detail, at least that the prosecution put up in that very effective grid, showing all of the elements, all of the information. That doesn't mean that they discounted it. They may have just felt the prosecution already made its case, or on the other side, that the defense made a stronger case, or at least that they raised reasonable doubt. The defense never had to prove innocence. They just had to raise reasonable doubt by undercutting any of the framework of the prosecution's elements of the crimes.
They gave them kind of an a la carte menu, the idea that maybe he died from carbon monoxide poisoning from the car, that maybe his heart was enlarged, that the drugs affected things. Was that more or less than you would expect in a case like this in terms of things that the jury might be able to hang a reasonable doubt belief on?
That's
right. I mean, those elements, so you had three major causative elements that the defense argued. Number one, that fentanyl levels were well above what studies show is a fatal dosage. I think he had his were at 11, and studies show that 3 is enough to kill with fentanyl. Methamphetamines were not at a fatal dosage, but combined with other things like his poor health, his obstructed arteries, and even his COVID diagnosis, and this is what the defense argued, could have caused the death. But in a sense, the burden here was flipped for the defense because in Minnesota, as long as the defendant set into motion the events that caused the death, that is enough for causation. In a way, it kind of inverts the burden and puts the burden on the defense to show that no matter how mean or nasty this knee was on the back of George Floyd's neck, it was not a substantial causative factor. The true substantial causative factor was that George Floyd's poor health combined with drug intake was the cause of his death. In a sense, the defense did have a burden here. They undertook a burden to prove their alternate theory, which was causation, and we're going to find out whether or not they met that burden. And of course, I use burden in air quotes because the burden always rests with the prosecution. It never shifts, and the defendant is supposedly cloaked in the presumption of innocence.
Yeah, the defense was talking about what a reasonable officer would do in this situation. That was a lot of part of their closing. Let me go, actually, let's just check where we are. We're a little after 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central Time. On the left of your screen, you're watching the crowd gathering near the courthouse. We were expecting to hear the verdict in the Derek Chauvin case. We still are. We were expecting to hear it in the last half hour, but we remain with you as the wheels of justice turn toward the verdict. In this case, the jury formally deliberating a little over 10 hours before reaching their decision here early afternoon Minneapolis time. And we got the word that between 3:30 and 4 Central time, we would hear a verdict. But no doubt we were drawing close, and that crowd obviously waiting with anticipation and bated breath to know where this case will go. Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer, videotaped in that infamous tape that showed his knee on the neck of George Floyd for 9.5 minutes. The prosecution's case is that he died as a result of that pressure, essentially suffocated, asphyxiated by Derek Chauvin. Let's go to NBC's Gabe Gutierrez. He's outside the courthouse watching the crowds, and that's building a sense of certainly tension out there, Gabe.
Yeah, Lester, this crowd has been growing over the last hour or so. And as you can see behind me, they're gathered here holding up signs, chanting, throwing their support behind George Floyd's family and watching right in front here of the Hennepin County Government Center. This is the courthouse where the verdict is expected to be read. I'm actually joined, Lester, by Philippe Cunningham. He is a council member in Minneapolis, and I've spoken with you, Philippe, many times since the death of George Floyd. And if you can put this into context for us, for our viewers, how significant is this moment right now?
I mean, this moment is hugely significant, not only here in Minneapolis, but also...
Gabe, I hate to interrupt. My apologies to the councilman. The court is back in session. You're looking at Derek Chauvin.
Here we go. I felt like I needed to stand. Nigga, you going to jail. You was going to jail.
They're standing as the jury now is led into the courthouse. Of course, we have not, and we will not see the jury, but
I only see the one,
all the participants and
deputy.
spectators are standing right now as they take their seats.
Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict.
I'm stressed and got hot. Jesus.
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 52, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 55, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 79, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 85, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 89, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 91, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 92, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Are these your verdicts? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
Members of the jury, I find that the verdicts as read reflect the will of the jury and will be filed accordingly. I have to thank you on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota for not only jury service, but heavy-duty jury service. What I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow the deputy back into your usual room, and I will join you in a few minutes to answer questions and to advise you further. So, all rise for the jury.
Okay, because you know that's, listen. We're going to put them on. We don't want to call it.
All right, you seated? With the guilt.
We're going to mute them for a second. Listen, because this is not normally our testimony when it comes to these types of things. When things are done to us, this is normally not our testimony. And so if we seem a little emotional, it's because normally in these things we're told our life hold no value, that we are still considered chattel and property and can be done in any manner that they seem fit, and it's okay. Oh, go to jail immediately. So come on, get these. Come on, get these cuffs on, sir. They have immediately revoked his bail and remanded him. Come on, put your hands behind your back, beloved. Go comply with the people, because you going to jail today. Jesus. Okay, so they are adjourned.
Anticipation of his sentencing now 8 weeks from now. We want to go right to NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
Ooh, glad I got hot up under this wig. Listen, y'all. And this baby is in tears. Listen. Hold on. I'm gonna unmute this.
3 counts, and the reaction can best be summarized by Bree Graham. She's the woman I spoke with just before this verdict was read. She told us that she had been traumatized watching this trial. Bree, what is your reaction? And when that verdict was read, what went through your head?
I honestly, I don't really have the words for it right now, and I'm trying to take everything in. And it feels like we can take the day to celebrate that we're finally getting a taste of justice. And then tomorrow we move on to Dante, and we keep doing this until they give us
young lady,
what we need across the board, you know?
Bree, a few moments ago, I saw you started crying. It was emotional for not just you, but many folks here. Explain to me a little bit more about, what did you have doubts leading into this verdict? How much anticipation, how worried were you about this?
Of course I had doubts. We have doubts every time something happens. I mean, we have doubts when the police say that he's unarmed and, Adam Toledo had his hands up. We have doubts when they lie about what the cameras are. We always have doubts, and this was definitive, and this was solidified, and we finally got the justice that we needed. People see it on the news and they don't understand, but living here and breathing this energy in every single day, it's so much, and it finally feels like the smoke is cleared just a tiny bit enough just to take a deep breath,
Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. You were telling me you're 31 years old. You've lived in Minneapolis for how long? 10 years?
Yeah, over 10 years in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and this is what I would call home. My friends are here. Some of my most important families here.
Incredibly significant moment. I'm glad we're able to share this with you. Thank you so much for talking with us. And again, we appreciate your time. Lester, what she told me is something just we saw unfold here just within the last few minutes. If we can look around, this is the demonstrators that have gathered here. They all gathered close together to watch the verdict unfold live on their cell phones. And they all gathered in small groups. And some of the feeds came in just a few seconds before the others. Different people were yelling guilty on that first count. And then I think once the second and the third count came in, guilty, there was just a wave that just rippled across this crowd. And I think if I could sum it up in one word, Lester, it is relief. Relief from a crowd that had been waiting for this verdict for months.
We got 30 seconds
from the
to enjoy the justice before you get something else. Can we just enjoy this right now?
And boarded up buildings
tomorrow we will renew the fight in
downtown
regards
Minneapolis.
to
relief from people like Bree Graham, who did not know what would happen and who told us
we understand that.
how this is something she's been waiting for. And now the question becomes, is this just about George Floyd? What about Dante Wright? What about other police encounters? They are still very much on the minds of the demonstrators here. But again, Lester, if I had to sum up what I just saw in the last few moments, it would be relief. Back to you.
Gabe, thank you. If you're just joining us, guilty on all counts against Derek Chauvin, who watched the jury or looked out toward the judge. His eyes darting, but a very serious, focused look as he heard those counts, all three verdicts read against him. And as we noted, he is now in the custody of the county sheriff there and will remain in custody pending his sentencing 8 weeks from now. Let's turn to criminal defense attorney and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, obviously a huge effort on the part of the prosecution in this case. More than 40 witnesses, and they were victorious today.
Y'all on mute for now.
And I'm sure that if you talk to any of the prosecutors moments before the verdict was read, none of them felt it was a sure thing. None of them felt they had a layup. None of them thought it was a slam dunk, and they shouldn't. Because they always have the burden, the highest burden in.
Put them on mute. Exactly, Xavier. We gotta take our wins one at a time. Exactly. Normalize our lives having value. Normalize us having encounter with the people that are supposed to protect us, not turning out with one of us being dead. Okay, so I love you too, Almond Brown. I am going to jump off of here because I'm still on the clock. So I love y'all. I'll see y'all later in Loretta's Live, where I'm sure we're going to discuss this. And if you haven't yet, check out my Ready to Love video. Wait, what? Wait, what? What happened? Okay. I love y'all, and I will see y'all later at Loretta's house. Oh, exactly. Be blessed. I love y'all. I'll talk to y'all later.